episode 5 of Good Grief. I actually just said episode 4, which just shows that I have no concept of time or what I do with my day, evidently. How are you, Maisie?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Better than last week, to be fair.
Yeah,
we really slugged it last week.
We did.
But we got good feedback on the episode, so thanks, guys. That meant a lot after a pretty rubbish week. Reminds you why you do it, doesn't it?
Exactly that.
What are we talking about today, Maz?
We are talking about the different forms of grief, because it's not just bereavement.
It's not.
Grief comes in many a form. And we thought we'd talk about that in a bit more detail, because I feel like everyone's grieved at some point, even if you don't feel like you've grieved because someone's died.
Yeah,
We've
totally.
all gone through the feelings of grief, and it looks different, but...
For sure. Yeah. You can sort of I think after losing someone, you can write down all these feelings and then look back to say a broken down friendship, I don't know, watching someone poorly pass away, or, I don't know, someone that's going through their own problems, like addiction perhaps, people, sadly get dementia and things like that, like deteriorative diseases. So, yeah, it's just, well, it's pretty shit, isn't it?
It is.
And that's why we grieve.
That's light note to start you off
yeah,
with.
that's why we feel those grieving sort of feelings. So yeah, that's what we want to talk about today, and we just want to get it all out there that this is a podcast because we've both lost our dads, but it doesn't mean to say that that's the only grief we've felt in our lives. So that's why we're here. We're gonna hopefully validate your feelings today.
Yeah.
But no pressure. Well, on us, we might not. Don't hold us to that, guys, if we haven't solved your problems today. Anyway, so I don't mind starting, because I think for me, losing my dad, the grieving came more so before he died. And I would say that I felt the feelings of grief watching someone that was still alive change. I think that's a really big, when we talk that grief isn't bereavement, of course my dad did sadly die in the end. Sorry to ruin the story, but
Plot twist.
yeah, plot twist, guys. He's gonna walk through the door any minute now. Anyway, yeah, he it was just a terrible time, and I always talk about the death of my dad, and I can say it in a light-hearted way, but when it comes to talking about the struggle that he went through before he passed away and watching someone's spark just go, basically, it's I can't actually joke about it. It's too much, and still, nearly 6 years on, it's so painful.
Yeah.
And for me, those feelings of grief completely overtake the feeling of the bereavement side of it. I think watching someone turn into someone they don't want to be, and someone you never thought they would be, especially a role model. Not especially, it hurts anyone, but when you watch a parent or grandparent, someone you look up to, turn into something where they are then reliant on someone else, and they've upheld the fact that they always want to be the caregiver, and they end up not being able to do that. It's incredibly painful and hard for people like myself, everyone that's gone through that. I know your granddad's not very well, and it's hard, isn't it?
Well, I never had the pleasure of meeting your dad, Brian, but from what I've heard, he was kind of the life of the party,
For
zest
real.
for life,
For real.
and just sounded like the best guy ever. So I think the hard thing is, it's such a contrast, isn't it, when you see
Totally.
someone who was, like you say, just that person who would look after his family and cheer you up when you're down, to then you having to kind of be that caregiver, and your mum and your sister Daisy. It's just so kind of parallel, right word?
Yeah, to losing them.
Yeah. Cool.
Parallel.
Yeah, I don't
We're
want to say
on
it's
the
like the
same
same as.
Fun. Yeah.
But no, I think it must have been incredibly tough, mate, and I just can't even imagine how hard it was. I guess for me with my granddad, I think we spoke on the last episode about people. Sometimes when you talk about someone, a grandparent, for example, people might not have had the relationship, and for me, my granddad was a parental figure. When my dad wasn't on the scene when I was younger, so I lived with my grandparents until Vince arrived, knight in shining armour, in my life. So I guess from the age 2 till 7, my mum had a bungalow built, so I lived with her, and she was a single mum. But I also lived with my grandparents growing up for quite a long time, and also at other stages when I was growing up. So my granddad was a huge father figure in my life when I was really little, and he sadly got Alzheimer's. And the change that he's gone through over the last, I'd say, 5 years has probably been the toughest. Has just been staggering. I mean, like, he is unrecognisable to the man he was before. And I guess for my nan, my mum, you know, my family who are seeing him, and my uncle, basically all my family, I don't want to like discount people. I'll list it all off right now, so don't miss anyone out. But I guess everyone has slowly seen him deteriorate into who he is now, and kind of a bit of set the scene there. He's in a home. He does remember us most of the time. To be honest, he doesn't really talk nowadays. It's like I go and see him, he kind of just mumbles. He sleeps a lot. Sometimes he gets quite aggressive, and he never ever was an aggressive man, ever. I never saw him really raise his voice or ever kind of get frustrated, I guess. So when I see him now and he gets sometimes aggressive and can be a bit kind of fisty almost, it's just so different to what it was before. I guess with your dad, it was over, how long was he poorly for?
Well, he's poorly for 2 years, but I mean, I'm going to say it's a funny story. It's not a funny story, but he deteriorated really, really quickly. He got poorly. I'm sure he got pneumonia. So, I mean, that was the cause of his sort of downfall. He had lung cancer, and I was at university, and I came home for Christmas, and my mum, just protecting me, didn't sort of tell me the extent of him deteriorating, and I came home and saw him bedbound basically, and about 5 stone lighter, not being able to walk, not really eating, you know, and it's traumatic,
that must
isn't
have been
it?
such a shock.
Well, yeah, I mean, the same with your granddad. You walk away from those interactions and you just feel empty. You're yearning for what your life used to be, what that person's life used to be. And I think with me at the time, I felt a lot of pressure to almost like oust the feelings of what I'd just seen of my dad and maintain how he used to be, because I was I'm not really, but I mean, I'm in fear that I'm going to remember who he was when he passed, rather than the full of life guy who like was a bit chubby, like, do you know what I mean, like just the nice things that you remember about people. And you go away from those interactions. I mean, just going into my dad's room at that time, and it's haunting, like, and I'm sure you have the same feelings with your granddad. You walk away sometimes and you're like, wow, life is so shit. And you really, you know, people say it, you never think it will happen to you or someone you love, and when it does, it just reminds you of how important it is to just cherish people for who they are, like the little things, like just being able to see your dad walk down the stairs and make a cup of tea. You're desperate to see it, and it's you're grieving before someone's gone, and I can totally match up the feelings of grief of missing someone to the feelings of grief of, you know, when someone's still alive.
Yeah, well, my granddad now, I mean, I just think every time I see him, this is no life for you. Like,
sad, isn't it?
I'm actually, again, a bit of a teaser for the next episode of John, but the psychologist that we're having on the next episode, I went to lunch with him the other day, and he was telling me some crazy stats about, and I'm not going to repeat them because I'll probably get it wrong, so we'll wait until he comes on. I don't want to misquote him.
You're going to scare the whole listeners.
Yeah.
100% of people.
But he does a lot of work in the Netherlands, and he was saying over there, assisted dying, the stats around it's crazy, because over here, it's kind of like people just turn into almost like a vegetative state, don't they?
Yeah.
And if I asked my granddad 10 years ago, would you want to be living right now looking at yourself? He would no way.
It's a dignity thing, and it feels cruel. My mum will agree about not just my dad, but her dad as well, because my granddad died 6 days before my dad to dementia, and you know, there's a massive weight for my mum to go to. But I remember my mum just getting so upset, just being like, he just has no dignity, and he's a proud man, like, you know, as all these people are, you know, that how would we feel, you know, as like, you know, in our 20s, like living life, and you never think about these things, but it's so morbid to think about, but it's so important at the same time to discuss, because it's such a lonely feeling when you're grieving someone that's still alive, because you never think it's the right thing to say, I wish they were dead, I wish they were free.
So true.
And it always seems so wrong. And unless you've been through it, unfortunately, most people will go through it. You know, it's horrible to see someone deteriorate.
Well, people live way longer nowadays, don't they? I mean, you know, 20 years ago, hitting 70 was like old age. Now people go on to like 100. So I think we're only going to get more and more of this. So I just feel like, this is going to be kind of the new normal. People just growing almost too old for their years nowadays. And don't get me wrong, I mean, my nan's 80 odd and looks bloody fantastic and jigging up the garden when I went round earlier.
She would have stopped.
She literally is. But I think it's just, that contrast, I guess, for people that do kind of live too long and sadly almost trapped in their body when actually they probably wouldn't want to be there if they could see themselves. I guess talking around this subject, another important thing is talking about like loss of relationship. It's not always people who are becoming poorly, but also sometimes just cutting people off, or equally people cutting you off, and the grief that comes with that, because that's super challenging.
Yeah, totally. As that's sort of we've just spoken about like grief that comes that you can't prevent it, and we're now going to move on to sort of chosen grief, where you're like, you know, choosing to end a relationship that doesn't work. And again, I can match the feelings of grieving my dad, who I lost, to the grief of, you know, like not being wanted as a friend anymore, or realising that you do need to probably cut someone off, and vice versa. So very, very valid topic of grief. I know that when we talk about grief, people will be like, well, I've never lost someone, I don't feel qualified to talk about this. And most of the time you'll find you really are. I mean, like, even before I lost my dad, if I'd a breakdown of a relationship, a friendship, whether that was, you know, romantic or as I said, like a friend, a family member, you know, it never feels right, but sometimes you have to, and you do end up grieving the life you had before, the relationship you had with that person.
I think it's hard, like, not to get it twisted, because I also don't want to take away from people who have lost someone and the pain and the agony of losing someone to bereavement, because
totally, that's different.
They're just kind of what we want to signify here is that grief comes in so many forms, and there's so many complex emotions around all types of grief.
Absolutely.
When you're cutting someone off, it's extremely painful, or when you've been cut off, it's extremely painful. Like, I know people who have just randomly, you know, friends in the past who've just randomly stopped messaging, stopped talking to me, and it is like the weirdest feeling, because not only do you think, God, have I done something wrong? And you really look inward and think, oh, it must have been this, it must have been that, and it gives you a huge amount of anxiety and massively knocks your confidence. But also, it's just a really confusing thing when, I guess, you've had the shock of someone just stop talking to you for no reason whatsoever, because you kind of mourn that friendship a lot, and it goes through your head a lot of the time as well. I find that about friendships that I've lost over the last few years. You know, sometimes it pops into my head and think, God, that's just bizarre that happened.
Well, again, like, we're not downplaying obviously bereavement, but I mean, like, the same way that I'll have memories of my dad, I'll have memories of like past friendships, and it hurts. I'm not going to say it hurts the same. They hurt in different ways. But it doesn't mean that the feeling's not there. And I think as humans, like, we have a natural sort of instinct to keep our pride intact. And I think when you get cut off, you're like, oh, I, you know, put on a brave face. It's fine, you know, like, other people want to be my friend, but inside it's crippling. It's like, you know, as you said, anxiety inducing to the max. No one wants to think that they're disliked or that they're not good enough, and unfortunately, like, those feelings do have you grieving. But then on the flip side, sometimes you have to do it for your own sake. Cutting off people that can be, you know, closest to you almost, and just, you know, realising that for the greater good, it's time to move on. Yeah,
it's such a courageous thing to do when you've been messed around, or you've had a traumatic relationship in whatever sense, and you then decide, I need to put an end to this, because it's so daunting, and also just like really painful to go through those emotions. And we talk a little bit around that a bit later on. I guess one thing I found when one of my friends kind of stopped talking to me is it brought up a lot of shit from the past. So when I was at school, I've got amazing girlfriends now, but I didn't really have loads of girl mates, and I didn't get on with people as well as I would have hoped to at school, and I found school really hard. So when my friend just stopped talking to me out of the blue, it brought up so much stuff from when I was younger, and the confusion and the feelings I battled then all came back to the surface, and it was really weird because it kind of just puts you back in that mindset of what you went through previously. And I think loads of people can probably relate to that, because school wasn't an easy time for so many people out there, for bullying or just the stress and just how complicated school is. I guess it's a bit of a minefield sometimes.
Well, it's like navigating emotions when you're like a hormonal ball of energy, and it's like, looking back at that, it's such a confusing time. And we say being an adult's hard, but like, I wouldn't want to be 14 again.
God no, God no.
To be honest,
especially not in like nowadays.
Oh my!
With social media, I mean, I know we had it. We're not like ancient, but
I know
with social media,
when they had TVs back in my day. But no, like, I know the pressures that kids go through these days. Again, I don't want to sound like an old person, but
oh god, I know, I could not.
I was playing Match Attacks in the library and like tech decks and stuff. I mean, to be fair, they were the good days. I'd love to do that now, but no. I mean, as we were speaking on that about like grieving the life that you once had, whether it's with a friend or like a family member, and then it brings back the life that you once had, grieving yourself, which I think is a really, I mean, we have touched about on it before, you know, you grieve who you once were after losing someone. But I think something that has hit me hardest without a doubt and has rocked me for the rest of my life is the anxiety I feel after watching my dad die. And I don't have it word for word, but we got a really good question last week, didn't we? I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah, it was my friend Olivia Palmer, shout out.
Big up.
We said we were not going to do big up anymore.
I'm not going to say big down.
We realised we said big up way too much in the last episode.
Much.
Honestly, I feel like we tag on to like sayings, don't we? Like poignant. Christ.
That's a big thing. That's poignant.
It's extremely poignant.
Big up poignant.
But no, Olivia Palmer, legend, known her since school, and bless her, she sent me a voice note in the week, and she'd obviously really been trying to ask a question, but she was like, I don't know how to word this, I don't know if it's going to upset you. But first of all, anyone who is in our boat and wants to ask someone about death or whatever, I'm sure most grievers would say, welcome the questions. It is, because not only does it show that you care, but it also shows that you're willing to learn more about that, and that's really important. But she asked me, she said, you know, she kind of suffers with anxiety, as we all do, around worrying about people who are going to die. And I was the same before Vince died. I had almost like an impending fear of doom, and I really worried about my mum in particular dying. I don't know why I never thought about Vince dying. It was just like, for me, he was like just gonna live forever. So that was the biggest shock of my life when that happened. But she said that, you know, the fear of losing someone is so significant. How do you cope when you've lost someone? Like, what happens to that fear as it kind of increased loads? And especially with Vince being a sudden, unexpected death, like, are you not hugely anxious all the time about anyone leaving the house now? And I was like, yes, I am. And I know we spoke about this. It amplifies it extremely because you've seen firsthand that people aren't, you know, like, people don't live forever, unfortunately, and you see firsthand the fragility of life. However, it does also make you so grateful for the people you have around you, that you're living life, that they're alive, they're healthy, touch wood. So I think it's kind of a weird one. It gives you a new perspective because you're extremely grateful, but it is really hard because every day, anytime anyone leaves the door, I'm like, oh my God, what could happen? And your mind worries all the time.
Yeah, totally. It's a daily battle, because once you've realised what can happen, will happen, You know, I mean, we're all anxious people in this room, and I'm sure the people listening, everyone suffers with anxiety in some way.
Yeah, let's normalise that.
Let's really normalise anxiety,
Yeah.
because it's normal to feel anxious over the smallest and biggest things. And I think when you go through something big, or even if you go through something small, like you know, none of us can we're not going to rank your experiences, but it gives you more of a reason to feel anxious. You have something to lose because you've lost it already.
Yeah.
And it's so common. But as you said, I sometimes, I'm saying this now because I'm not anxious at the moment, I find comfort in my anxiety, because I've been through stages in my life where I've not been able to feel anxiety because I haven't felt a purpose of life almost. And I think when you have something to lose, you feel anxious. And I think the reason why we have anxiety now, with regard to our bereavements, is because we're mourning and acknowledging a loss of something that was so beautiful, and the love that we had, and the family dynamics that we had, and now you don't have them. So you're yearning for something that you loved so much, which is anxiety inducing. So it's like, oh, I feel something because I've got a purpose. I was, you know, you were Vince's daughter, I was my dad's daughter, like that was our purpose.
Yeah.
And now it's just navigating, you know, we've said it so many times, grief is like love with nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And I think anxiety sometimes is a product of that. You know, as I said, I can speak from experience of never feeling anxiety and never feeling like I cared about anything genuinely. And, you know, now I might be way more of an anxious wreck, but I'm grateful that I am like that, because I've got a life sort of worth living, and we've got people in our lives that are worth caring about and worth spending time hurting over and worrying about. And there is something quite beautiful and quite comforting about that. But then when you're having a panic attack and you're sitting in the bath rocking back and forth like, well, it's all gonna end, it's all gonna end, you don't think it's beautiful. And
Bravo.
it can,
Sorry, what an answer.
well, it can be ugly, but it can be beautiful. And, you know, like everyone, do you know what I mean? Put a bit of lippy on. Well,
no, I love that. I think it's so true. And like, yeah, I guess that's just something to remind yourself of. I mean, I obviously, different situation with your dad and how he passed, but Vince suddenly died, and I know he went to football with his mates. He was having a great time. I know he had banter in the car with my uncle and his best mate and like all the football lads on the way there. And I know he was living his best life. So he died in a really good place.
Yeah.
And that gives me some comfort. So I guess, in a nutshell, just live your life to the fullest, because you just don't know what's around the corner. And as you've just said, anxiety is only making you appreciate what you have and what you've got to lose ultimately.
Yeah.
So just take every day as it comes.
Exactly, which is anxiety inducing in itself. What's around the corner? Tell me what's around the corner. But yeah, we got some questions this week.
Cool. Questions. Obviously, we've done one already. So the first one is, and it kind of ties into what we were just speaking about. Someone has asked, I've never lost someone close to me to death. However, I have just had the end of a relationship recently, and I feel like I'm grieving. Do I call this grieving? Do my feelings feel valid?
That breaks my heart.
I know.
Because absolutely, like, that's what this episode is about, of course. And this podcast is about grief because of bereavement, as we've mentioned. But like, those feelings are so valid. Like, going through the breakup of a relationship, like, the same as, you know, losing someone to death, is you lose the life you had with that person. You know, when you're in a relationship, whether it's, you know, romantic or friendship, like, you have a routine with that person, like, whether it's like going places together, listening to certain music together, eating together, sleeping together, like, not like that, but like it's not this kind of show, but like you are mourning like the life that you once had with that person, which is it's not exactly the same as a bereavement, but the fundamentals are there. Like, it is, you know, a similar thing. So absolutely, that's valid.
Yeah, absolutely. I just echo what Rose has said. I think it's always like the small things that you notice more. Like we've always said with everything. And I think humans love routine. So I think when there's a big shift in your routine, and you haven't got that person who is your person, again, whether it be best friend, partner, whoever it is, you are mourning. So completely valid.
I'd also say on that point, what you said about routine is I think that's also a driving force behind people trying to keep relationships together that aren't meant to be there. I think that people just can't accept change.
Yeah.
Like, no judgment, we've all been there, and you know, still there for any aspect of life. Like, I think sometimes clinging on to change is you're not ready to accept the grief that you're going to feel. So yeah, totally valid topic.
Yeah, and hopefully that person is okay, but just, I guess, remember that everything, I know it sounds really stupid, but everything does happen for a reason. I'm a big believer of that. Unfortunately, it sounds shit when you put that on bereavement, because
I know
everything happens for a reason, mate.
Sorry, guys.
But I do think, like, with any relationship ending, as hard as it is, new doors will open and things will get easier. And yeah, I guess just try and kind of reflect on maybe the things that weren't going well that led to that point. And if you have been blindsided and it doesn't seem that way, then just keep putting one foot in front of the other, because things will get better.
That's all you've got to do, for real.
Okay, one of them was what we've kind of covered already. How do you cope with the anxiety, fear of losing someone after you have been grieving? I think we've kind of touched on that.
And I also want to echo that, like, that happens not just through bereavement. I think it's really triggering. I mean, even sort of, I don't want to make it out like this isn't as important, but I mean, like, pets. I'm so upset and worried about my pets, and I mean, like, me and Jam had a hamster called Claire, and I think you'll remember how upset I was, and I kept saying, like, I think it's because of my dad. Like, I'm so, like, I just didn't want to feel those feelings again. And, you know, I was burying a hamster that I'd had for 2 years, but the feelings were there in a way.
Well, they're part of your family, aren't they? At the end of the day.
Yeah, little Claire, bless her.
Oh, R.I.P. Claire.
Sorry about Harry's lunchbox.
Yeah, can you tell?
Yeah, Claire, our hamster that passed away, is unfortunately buried in Harry's lunchbox. We panicked. Miss her. And Harry misses the lunchbox. I heard he gets very stressed about his Tupperware.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I like hard agree on pets. I think, especially if you have experienced a death, you associate so many feelings with a pet dying, and I guess that brings up a lot of stuff. I know my mum has a boxer called Claude, and he's an old boy now, and he's gone all grey, and honestly, I'm fearing him dying just because he has got mum through massively since Vince has passed. Well, not really got her through, but helped significantly. So yeah, I've got a lot of fear about him dying, also because I love him.
Would you say the fear's like sort of grown since you've lost Vince?
Yeah, I would. I've always like worried about him dying because he's just been there for so long and I just love him. But I think I worry about how my mum's gonna cope without him because he'd like sleep in the bed with her after he'd passed, and like he's a really sensitive, intelligent dog. Like knows when mum's upset. So yeah, I worry that's like her comfort blanket
for sure.
But hopefully he'll just live forever.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Watching someone get old and struggle to remember family, not a question, but a type of grief. Yeah, so true. I think it doesn't always have to be dementia, Alzheimer's, anything associated to old age, but watching someone grow old is really, really tough.
Yeah, like even like my dad was older, and like I remember me and Daisy used to play footy with him, and he used to stand in goal and like go and like grab our shots because like, well, yeah, they weren't mine actually. Still to this day, not last week. They're normally off target, and my dad would like run and get them, and it got to a point where I remember like he couldn't go in goal anymore, and it would just be like, oh, like, you know, it's just missing, like you watch, you know, someone go from who you remember them to be to just not, and it happens to all of us guys. Like,
I also think the person who is old or older, they almost like grieve their younger self. Yeah. My nan, again, shout out to Nanny Jan, absolute legend. I remember the couple of days before the wedding, I brought a skateboard round for my mum's bulldog Beans, and my nan was like riding it round. I was like, Nan, you're gonna like if you fall off, you're gonna break your hip. She was like, oh no, I'm fine. No, you're not the young sprightly girl you used to be, hon. So yeah, I think like there is a bit of mourning like your younger self, because
Yeah.
it's such a change, isn't it? And like it's the realization of that you can't do the things you used to do, and I guess you're like forgetful and things like that. And then there's also been a lovely, just a comment actually, and also welcome your comments, guys, because
Yeah.
I've quite enjoyed like hearing perspectives on this.
So comforting, really good.
But someone put, chosen grief is weird, cutting out a family member or friend and mourning the what if of a better relationship with them, but knowing it's best for you. Accepting that truth is a hard pill to swallow, but self-love, boundary setting feels shit in the moment, but so much better long term. I'm absolutely loving the podcast. You guys are both amazing humans. Oh, thank you. But yeah, I really like that, because I think it completely resonates with what we've just said. The cutting off a relationship is so difficult, but it's like you have to do it, and it's really, really painful, but you know you're putting yourself first.
Yeah.
But it's such a difficult thing to do. And we're going to have a little chat with Jam behind the camera. Because me and her have gone through the same thing. We've both cut off our own dads. So it would be good to get her on and just get her kind of thoughts on that, and also to put a face to a name. You hear about her every episode.
all the time.
You're about to see this gorgeous girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all the Q&A element done.
Perfect. I think we covered a lot of ground there, to be fair, and we will be
be fair.
covering a lot more ground, to be fair. Next time, I'm not going to be here. I'm sure everyone, to be fair, is going to miss me, to be fair. But I am being replaced with someone who has about 100 times my brain, and I'm so excited to hear his insight. It's John. I don't know his surname.
Harrison.
John Harrison. That makes it even better. What a name. He's going to come on and chat to Maisie about dementia and cognitive diseases.
Yeah, so he's like he leads kind of research around dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. He's also an author.
Wow.
He's basically got many strings to his bow, and we're going to have a lot of experience sat here in the garage, which is
I'm excited.
very exciting. And yeah, he'll put all of the things we ramble on about into context with science, which we aren't qualified for. Hello? Sorry, I just checking my mic still.
Like, does it? I reckon we leave that in. Guys, on that note, that was
That was a ghost vibe.
Oh, I actually reckon leave that in. That was well funny. But yeah, John next week, guys, and you're going to be buzzing for it. I already know. Hello. Goodbye.
Bye, guys. Much love.